You know, it's a bit of a conundrum. When you come across a fanfic that is better than the sequel of something, but is not good. Today's fanfic, Masque, or Masque, I think it's Masque. It's a Phantom of the Opera fanfic that is a sequel to the original Phantom of the Opera. Now, for those Broadway lovers out there, you probably know that Phantom of the Opera did indeed have an actual sequel called Love Never Dies, which is rather ironic considering what happens in said sequel. It was not a good sequel. I never saw it myself, but I did see a review of it. And, yes, in my opinion, Phantom of the Opera is a stand-alone story. Like the original Dragonheart. A stand-alone story, as in, you don't make a sequel to it. And yet they did. This story, technically, is better than Love Never Dies. But it's, let's just get into it. So, it's a long story. The author is Dark Amistika. Amistika. I'm sorry if I'm not saying that right. It is 17 chapters, over 35,000 words, written back in 2005. I'm not sure when Love Never Died came out, or Love Never Dies came out. I do apologise. So this might have existed before that or after. But if it existed before that, like I said before, it is a better sequel than the actual sequel, but let's just get into it. So this story takes place like practically right after the events of Phantom of the Opera, or at least the first couple chapters say that at least. So Christine and Raoul, they have a daughter. We're just going to call her Amy. Her full name is a bit different than that, but she goes by the nickname of Amy. Now, she's described as looking a lot like her mother, not really like her father. And she can't quite sing as well as her mother, but she's an excellent dancer. Like, even at the age of 6, she's an excellent dancer. And everything's going all fine and stuff for the family. But unfortunately, an accident occurs where poor Amy, she ends up losing her sight and is blind. Although she can maneuver perfectly fine in future chapters, but we'll get to that when we get to that. So obviously, she enters a depression. And we fast forward to roughly 10 years later. She's not quite 16 yet, but she's practically 16. And, she's immersed in books. She knows how to get around the house, no problem. And she has a kind of a rough relationship with her father, Raoul. So rough, in fact, that they get in a bit of a row during dinner one night. And he decides, being level-headed as he is, that he's going to slap his daughter across the face while holding a knife pen. And somehow, he didn't realize he was holding it to begin with. That would be like if Meg decided to slap me across the face while holding her straight blade open. Oh, I'm sorry, Sue, I didn't realize it was open.
It's okay, dear. I'll live. I just need you to get the dragon book.
That would never happen. But anyway, sorry, Meg, for the joke. Anyway, she's obviously upset, which I don't blame her, because she has this big gash down her cheek. So she runs off. And where did she run off to? Well, to the opera house, of course. So apparently, even though a lot of bad things happen at this opera house, Christine still sings there. And also, even though he hasn't been seen, everyone knows that the Phantom is still there. Yes, okay then. Very realistic. At least in Love Never Dies, he moved on to another place. He didn't stay at the bloody opera house, but I digress. So, even though she's blind, she knows how to get there. No problem. She knows so well that she might as well have eyes. And she makes her way up to the Phantom's box and decides to stay in the Phantom's box. And who comes up to the Phantom's box? Why, the Phantom, of course. He immediately knows that she is Christine's daughter. He doesn't know at first that she's blind, but then she tells him that she's blind. And, he's obviously appalled that Raoul slashed her face, and he offers, to remedy it for her. So she agrees, and they go down to his lair. And he's telling her in descriptive detail what the cave and stuff looks like, because apparently Christine did tell her daughter about some of the events of Phantom of the Opera. I don't know why you would, but I digress. And, they make their way down to the lair, and they're getting along well, and she's, she keeps talking about how he's, really nice and stuff, and that she really likes him, even though she does know his history. And, at some point he tells her to call him by his actual name, which is Eric, which I guess that is canon, apparently. So fast forward to Raoul and Christine. The Phantom was nice enough to leave a note for Raoul to let him know that I have your daughter. I will bring her back to you after tonight's performance. Raoul is being charming, and I say that sarcastically. He's throwing a fit over everything that's going on with, the Phantom having his daughter and that he's going to try something, which, on the one hand, I can't really blame Raoul, but on the other hand, how he's written is just so bloody obnoxious, and Christine's trying to talk him down, and it goes back and forth with Raoul like this for the entire bloody story. So he decides to storm down to the Phantom's lair without waiting for the show to end. And, he has a few words with the Phantom. And Amy overhears this, and she gives her father a piece of her mind and is obviously still mad at him for what he did. So she's like, you know what? I want to stay a bit longer with the Phantom. Or with Eric, thank you very much. So Raoul's mad about this, but then he accepts it and he goes back to Christine, and she's going to stay, I believe, for like another night. Keep in mind, I read this story about a week ago, so my details might be a little off. So, after Raoul leaves, Amy has a bit of a fumble, and she bangs her head. So the Phantom brings her up to a room and lets her stay in the bed and tells her, don't move or anything, you need to rest, you need to recover from your injury. And, oh so shockingly, Amy regains her sight. You'll learn very quickly that this story gets very, very predictable after a while. So she regains her sight, but she thinks it's a good idea to still pretend to be blind so she can see what Eric really looks like. And she does just that. She catches him sleeping, and she's like looking at his face. And she's not really that appalled by it. Like, she keeps on talking about how people were trying to make it sound like it was way worse looking than it really was. But, for her, she doesn't really think he looks that bad. So fast forward to a little bit later. He walks in on her holding an ornament that her mother had given her. It looks like a mask. And she's still pretending to be blind. But then she slips up. And he gets mad at her at first. But then after a while, he forgives her and all is well. So she eventually gets reunited with her family, and Christine's happy about her eyesight coming back, but Raoul is just being Raoul, and it's really obnoxious. And so after finally not being a turd about stuff, they, have Amy rejoin the ballerinas that she was a part of when she was 6 years old. And somehow she still remembers how to dance perfectly. And Christine's being told by the instructor that it'll only take a couple of days. Yes, that's right. A couple of days for Amy to catch up with the others. She hasn't danced in 10 years. She's been blind for 10 years. But somehow she remembers how to do all these things. You know what? I think I smell a Mary Sue. So anyway, there's going to be a masquerade that's coming up. And what does Amy get in the mail? She gets a gorgeous dress and a mask that looks exactly like the mask that the ornament is based on. Everyone knows it's from Eric, including Raoul, and Raoul is throwing a fit over it. Which again, on the one hand, I can kind of understand. But how Raoul in this story is written is just so bloody aggravating. This was a story, I kid you not. I had to take small breaks from reading it because it was giving me a headache after a while. It really was. Say what I will about the lesbian Jesus story, but that one didn't give me a headache. It gave me nightmares, but not a headache. I don't know which one I would prefer. Neither, to be honest. So the masquerade comes. And of course the Phantom shows up and he's dancing with Amy, and Raoul catches wind of that and he's not too happy about it. So, Eric says, well, I'm sorry, but we can dance with whoever we want. And Amy's like, yes, Dad. So to cool down her father, Amy decides to dance with Raoul. And then she notices that her mother, Christine, is dancing with the Phantom. So she's trying to distract her father so he doesn't catch wind of that, because if he's having a fit over her dancing with the Phantom, he's going to blow a gasket if he sees that her mother is dancing with the Phantom as well. So a bit later, the Phantom, I know he's called Eric in the story, but I'm just going to call him the Phantom. The Phantom and Amy are having a moment on the roof. And she can hear footsteps coming, and she knows that it's her father, because when she was blind, she could tell who people were just by their footsteps, which I guess I can kind of buy that. So the Phantom's like, oh, well, I'll distract him so you can get off of the roof. So there's a confrontation between the Phantom and Raoul. The Phantom is actually, uncharacteristically, is being rather calm and stuff. He's not like how Raoul is in this story. I felt like they had him kind of be like how the Phantom was in the original Phantom of the Opera, but way worse. And the confrontation gets so bad that Raoul decides to whip out a gun and tries to shoot the Phantom, and he shoots his daughter instead. Okay, then. Everyone's like, okay, Raoul, what the hell? So she goes off to the hospital. Christine is obviously angry at Raoul for what he did, but then she kind of gets over it. The only one that really doesn't get over it is Amy. She's like absolutely refusing to acknowledge Raoul at all. She's like, you know what? No, I am done. She only got like shot in the arm, but still. First he slaps her with a penknife and then he shoots her. I mean, he wasn't trying to shoot her, but still. So anyway, she wants to stay with the Phantom. And she pretty much tells Raoul when he tries to get her back from the Phantom that she wants to stay with the Phantom for as long as it's going to take for her arm to heal. He's obviously mad about this, but again, he gets over it and lets her do this. And an interesting revelation is made. Now, it goes back and forth between the two perspectives, because the story is mostly from Amy's point of view. It's like in second person. It's not really in first person, but it's like it's from her point of view. It's kind of like with Game of Thrones, with the chapters where one is like on Cersei, one is on Arya, etc. Well, it's like that in this case. But then in this instance, it kind of switches back and forth between her point of view and Raoul's point of view. And both the Phantom and Christine tell their respective people that they're talking to the truth about Amy. Amy is not Raoul's daughter. Amy is the Phantom's daughter. Oh, how shocking. I think I'm going to have a heat stroke. I knew this was coming. I knew. She was not going to be Raoul's daughter. I knew she was going to be the Phantom's. And that's what happened in Love Never Dies. The son of Raoul and Christine is actually the Phantom's son. But I will say, at least in Love Never Dies, it was implied that that the conception happened during the original Phantom of the Opera. We were given the impression that it happened during, the introduction to the Phantom, Phantom of the Opera, la la la, when he took Christine away. But that's not the case in this story. No, what happened is, Christine and Raoul were having a row because they couldn't conceive. So Christine goes off in a huff, meets up with the Phantom, and they want to, just hang out with each other. Nothing serious. Well, one thing led to another. She happened to trip and fall on her back, and her legs magically spread open. And then he went, "Oh no, Christine, I will help you." And then he tripped, and somehow his wiener popped out of his pants, and boom, they had sex. Okay, not quite like that, but it might as well have been. It was just so bloody stupid. It's like, so in other words, Christine cheated on Raoul. And for some reason, Raoul's not too upset about this. Like, he's a little bit at first, but then he forgives her. It's like, oh, okay, not a big deal. And Amy just uses this as an excuse to hate on Raoul even more, because now he's not her father. So there's another confrontation between Raoul and the Phantom. And Amy overhears this one, but for some reason she gets mad at both of them and not just Raoul. And the Phantom's trying to chase after his daughter to get her to see reason. And he's kind of acting weirdly menacing during all this. But after a while, he stops being menacing and he finally gets her to be like, okay, what's really wrong? And she's like, oh, well, it just seems like, I want to be with you, but no one wants us to be together, blah, 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 blah. Like, how they have these two interact, they don't really interact as father and daughter. I get like the creepy love vibe. It probably isn't supposed to be like that, but it just seems like that. So, she's all upset about, why no one wants them to be together. And then Christine comes up to the roof. I think they were supposed to be at the roof. I think it was the roof. I don't know. But again, I read this about a week ago. And Christine is like, no, this is all my fault. I should have just been honest from the start. I shouldn't have tried to make this a secret. I should have just told you right off the bat that this was your daughter. Because there were suspicions back when it happened that the Phantom had suspicions that, Christine was with child, and that he said to her, if the child ends up being mine, you need to teach it music of the night, which Christine did. And the Phantom figured out that Amy was his because while she was staying with him, he overheard her singing music of the night. But anyway, back to what's going on at the moment. Christine is apologizing for how she handled things. And then Raoul comes up and he's being all overdramatic. And Christine decides then and there, you know what? I'm going to correct a mistake that I made. I shouldn't have done what I had done the night of the opera. Pretty much, she dumps Raoul and she's going to be with the Phantom instead. Now, the last two chapters were probably what gave me the biggest headache. The first chapter is like a fast forward, and it's a diary entry from Amy, talking about how, her and her mother are now living with the Phantom. Her mother is now married to the Phantom, and they live off in the woods, and they live in this gorgeous house that's all gothic and whatnot, and Raoul decided to go to America to get away from them, blah, 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 blah. That's like in italicized text, which, I guess I can understand that because it's supposed to be a journal entry. Then the final chapter, all bold. All bold. Why was it bolded? It did not need to be bolded, but I digress. It was all bolded, and it was in first person. It was from Raoul's point of view. So Raoul has been spying on them. And he's like, oh, I guess the Phantom's not that bad. And, oh, I guess I did act badly. And blah-de-blah, poor me, poor me. And Amy confronts him because she, caught on that he was spying. And she's like, you don't need to spy. Next time, just come up to the door. Mom and Dad would be happy to see you. Next time, just come and visit. We won't mind, really. Because apparently, I guess the Phantom does like Raoul. And the story just ends. So, yes. In some ways, this was better than Love Never Dies. So in Love Never Dies, Christine gets killed accidentally by her friend, Meg. Meg is flipping out at the Phantom, and she's holding a gun, and it accidentally goes off, and Christine dies. Charming. And in that story, the reason why Christine's son is the Phantom is because it's implied that after, the main debut of Phantom of the Opera, that her and the Phantom, did the thingy. So, I would say story-wise, this was better than Love Never Dies, because Love Never Dies was just a colossal waste of time, because the Phantom is still very problematic in that. I mean, I guess you could say he's more realistic to how his character was in the original Phantom of the Opera in that story versus this story. But this story, I felt like, had a better, happier ending, if you will say. And I guess maybe this one should have been called Love Never Dies, because Christine does go with the Phantom in the end. But like I said before, though, it was not good. This story, it did indeed give me a headache. The first couple of chapters read like a summary. It did get better as the story went on, but there were a couple of typos that were rather annoying. The characters, Eric, the Phantom, was just completely out of character. I felt like they just made him way more likable in this. I felt like the story was just one of those stories where, it tried to downplay his actions. And yes, Amy knows everything that he did, and she's trying to justify it in his head. It's like, yeah, well, the person he hung was a bit of a turd. It's like, yes, but the other person he killed did nothing wrong at all. And you don't just kill people just because you don't like them. That's, no. Having it be that Christine really did love the Phantom, it's like, no, I'm sorry. People that ship the Phantom and Christine, it's like he groomed her. He was lusting after her when she was a child. A child. It's not supposed to be a healthy relationship. So the fact that she goes and bees with him in this story, it was just silly. And how Raoul was written, oh my God, it was just so bad. It's like it was so painful to read his scenes because he was just so whiny and so obnoxious, and he doesn't learn anything. He does these awful things, and then he continues to be a jerk, and it's like, this is why your daughter is getting away from you, because you're not being a good dad. I mean, I did find it was very unrealistic that Amy, after finding out that the Phantom is her father, is like Raoul, who, it's like, no, you would still feel feelings for your father. He raised you. The Phantom is a stranger. I don't know. The story was just very unrealistic and just painful to read. I mean, I got to keep in mind, it was written back in 2005. It was technically better than Love Never Dies, but the story itself, to me, it just wasn't that good. And even if I read this as a teenager, I still don't think I would like it. But I digress. Well then, thank you all for watching today's episode. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, please leave a like. Please also leave a comment. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do that as well. I will see you all next week. Until then, cheerio.